In the following tutorial, we're going to take a look at basic timeline targeting. Start this project by opening up your timeline targeting start file, and of course when you save this, remove the start so that you know that it's your file. You could even name it to your own file if you want. Anyway, when we're going to be working with this file, I want to point out that there are two different light bulbs here, and you'll see that one light bulb is animated on the main timeline, the other one is animated in its own timeline. This is going to be very important because we're going to be targeting these different timelines as needed in our code. Now we're going to begin by doing just turning the light on, and then we're going to turn on the other light, and then you can probably figure out the off section. And then we're going to have another one that will turn both of them off at the same time, and it'll be slightly different. For the other events down here, the light on and off, I would like you to use a roll over and roll out mouse event, and you'll be doing those on your own based upon the same sort of targeting that we did before. Now, when we use targeting, we're talking about going to a particular keyframe on a timeline, and we need to specify what timeline we're on. Of course, this is the main timeline, and this is the timeline of the movie clip. So let's begin creating a function to turn our main timeline on, or turn the light bulb on our main timeline on. Let's make sure that we go to the actions layer as well and pin that script so that we know that we're on there. Now let's also create our comments as always. So this will be turn on main light bulb. Alright, the first thing we need is a function. Main light on, and we need to have some sort of event that is passed to that. We could do the whole event colon mouse event just to make sure that it is proper. And I'm going to leave off the void, go down a couple lines and finish my curly bracket after I've started it. And we're going to be targeting the main timeline. So the main timeline is really this timeline. We don't even really have to put this, but it's good to have some sort of targeting or scoping keyword there. So the main timeline can be referred to as this when the code is on the same timeline as, or let's say this is the main timeline because the code is currently on the main timeline. So this is scoping the main timeline. So we're going to say go to and play, and here's our big decision that we have. We can do two things with go to and play. We can reference a frame number, or we can reference a frame label. Right now, if we were going to go to a frame label or frame number, we do 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's frame 8. So I can just do go to and play 8, and then I can do a semicolon after that. Now we can close, we can add our event listener. So let's click on that light. It's called light1 on underscore btn. So that will be light1 on underscore btn dot add event listener, and it's going to be a mouse event, which is a click, and it will run the main light on function. So we should now have a function that turns on that main light. So let's try this, and you'll see it does work. Now, using frame numbers is usually not preferable. Typically what we want to do is have frame labels. So you'll see that I've already made a keyframe here on this labels track, and there's a label for where it would start and a label for where it would go back to turning off. So I'm going to give these labeled names here. So this would be on, and this one would be off. And that's a really important thing. Now, I should point out that you do have the ability to also do an anchor here, and you'll notice that it looks slightly different, and that anchor can be used in HTML some really cool ways, but we'll be dealing with that later. It's usually typically you would use a name. If you wanted to use a comment, we'll be doing that later on in the semester. Anyway, if we go back to our code, instead of going to a frame number, we would typically want to go to a frame label. So this will be going to the frame label labeled on. If we test our movie with Control-Enter, we should now be able to turn on that light exactly the same. Now the benefit of this is if I decided to add some more frames here, it wouldn't really matter how many I add because I'm not specifying what number to go to. I'm specifying to go to a label. So that's why that's useful. Now, if you are going to the very beginning to frame 1, then it's usually not a bad idea to go to frame 1 because frame 1 is always going to be frame 1, so that doesn't really matter. Anyway, we're going to now make it work for the light turning on for our timeline, our movie clip. So if I click on that, you'll notice that that movie clip has an instance name, and if I double click on it and I go into its timeline, you'll see that it also has this on and off section. I do want to point out why it has this keyframe at the beginning. This first keyframe is actually a stop action. If I go to that code, you'll see it has stop on it. And the reason why is because I want it to stop initially, and then it allows me to jump to the frames that I want. At the end of a section, such as this on section, it stops at a keyframe as well. Then it starts at a new section and stops at the end of that section. And that's exactly the same organization that I have on the main timeline, even though the animations might be a little shorter or a little bit longer. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, let's turn on our movie clip light. So I'm going to copy all of that code, paste it, and I'm going to call this the MC light bulb. So this is the movie clip light bulb on, movie clip light bulb off, on. This is going to be the light 2 on, I believe is what it says. We should check that just to make sure. It says light 2 on underscore button, so that is the exact name. And instead of this, instead of targeting the timeline of the main timeline, we want to target the timeline of this light, which is called light 2 underscore MC. So we're going to change this to light 2 underscore MC dot gotoAndPlay on. So all we've done is targeted the new timeline just like we're targeting a button. Now if we test this, we should be able to turn on the main timeline and the other timeline as well, the movie clip timeline. Now what I'd like you to do is extrapolate from that to also create the functions and event listeners to turn off the main timeline and the movie clip timeline, and then do the exact same thing again where you turn it on and off with one button using a rollover and rollout function. The last function that we're going to do together is both off, and this is pretty easy. I'm going to copy one of my existing functions, turn off both. Turn off both light bulbs. And so this will be lights off, lights off when it makes sense for both of them. And I'm writing it in that camel case so it's easy to remember. So now I have a function called lights off, and I have that same function name down here. This was called both off underscore button, so we'll need that. So we'll have both off underscore button, and then you'll see we have light 2 dot gotoAndPlay on, and we'll change this to off. Now in order to add it so that we also make the main timeline, we have almost the exact same code. The only thing that we need to do is target the timeline that we're currently on, which is this. And the reason I wanted to show this function where we have two different gotoAndPlays is that you can have multiple actions inside a function, and you can have both those actions run from an event. This of course is using a click event, which will turn both of them off. So I can now test my movie, turn one on, turn that one on, and turn them both off at the same time. Hopefully from this you should be able to create the code to turn off the other two buttons, or turn off the other two light bulbs using the other two buttons here, and then your rollover rollouts. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you soon. Thanks.